The SOS in the void, the stars were silent, endless and cold, stretching across the galaxy like an ocean without end. Among them drifted a small world, fragile and alone. Its people had no weapons strong enough, no armies vast enough, no walls high enough to stop what was coming. The invasion had begun 3 days earlier. Steel monsters from a warlike empire tore across their skies. Cities burned, rivers of smoke rose, and screams carried through the night. Families huddled in broken shelters, whispering prayers to gods who no longer answered. Their leaders had tried every channel, every alliance, every treaty, yet the calls went unanswered. The Galactic Council, once their trusted partners, ignored them, too afraid, too cautious, too unwilling to fight the enemy that had already destroyed so many worlds. Every message they sent was met with silence, or polite words that meant the same thing: "We will not help you." So they tried one last desperate act. They turned their long-range transmitters into the dark void and sent an ancient signal, one forbidden in council halls. It was the SOS of the ancients, a cry for help not to allies, not to friends, but to anyone who would listen. The message carried across stars: "Help us, please, before we are erased." For a long time, nothing answered. Their people watched the skies with hollow eyes, waiting for ships that never came. The enemy advanced, their fleets blotting out suns. The defenders grew weaker by the hour. Their hope slipped away like sand through tired hands. But then, something stirred. In the far reaches of space, on a world most feared and least understood, the signal was heard. Earth, known across the stars as the Deathworld, a place of storms and fire, of beasts that killed for sport and humans who had survived them all. Generations of alien scholars had whispered warnings: "Do not call Earth. Do not wake. Deathworlders. For if they rise, they do not stop." Yet the signal reached them, and Earth listened. The first response was silence. Human leaders gathered in war rooms beneath the soil, screens flickered with the alien plea. Their voices were low, steady, heavy with thought. The galaxy had abandoned this species, but humans did not. A commander with iron-gray eyes spoke softly: "No one else will come. If we don't, they die." And so the choice was made. The order spread through Earth's networks, hidden bases, and orbiting stations. Mobilize the fleet. For the dying aliens, there was still no sign. They thought the void had betrayed them. The enemy tightened its grip, enslaving villages, tearing apart defenses. The leaders of the doomed race gathered in one last bunker, their hands trembling. "No one heard us," they whispered. "We are finished." But the void had heard, and it had carried their cry to the most dangerous place imaginable. The humans prepared in silence. Ships rose from the oceans, breaking through waves like sleeping giants awakened. Massive carriers left their docks, surrounded by destroyers and frigates, each hull painted in dark steel, each engine roaring like thunder. Soldiers stood in lines, armored and ready. Their weapons were forged not for show, but for survival. For humans had never known peace without struggle. They had grown on a world where everything tried to kill them, and because of that, they were unmatched. In the council halls, rumors spread like fire. "The humans are moving," one ambassador said, his voice shaking. Another hissed, "Fools. They will bring chaos. They will bring war." But deep down, even those who feared knew the truth. When Earth moved, wars ended. And yet, the dying aliens did not know. In their final hour, they still thought no one cared. They sat in darkness, waiting for the last blow, their children clutch. At fading lanterns, their elders prayed. A single voice cried in the night: "Why did we call them? Why did we send the signal to demons?" The answer would come soon. Far away, Earth's fleet lined up in perfect formation, their jump drives charged. Their commanders spoke one word into the comms, a word that echoed through every ship: "Go." And then the stars bent. Light folded. The void rippled. The Deathworld fleet was on its way. The aliens would not die alone. Not tonight. Not while Earth still answered. The Deathworlders prepare. The order spread across Earth like a spark in dry grass. Hidden bases lit up with alerts. Deep-sea hangars rumbled as titans of steel rose from the oceans, and mountain bunkers opened their gates to release long-dormant ships into the skies. The humans had answered, and when they moved with terrifying purpose. In the war rooms, the commanders gathered around a massive star map. Holograms of enemy fleets glowed in red, marking the positions of the invaders. The alien plea for help echoed again through the room, a desperate cry that burned into every soldier's mind. One officer leaned forward, his jaw tight. They called us, even knowing the stories, even knowing what it means to wake Deathworlders. The commander with iron-gray eyes stood silent for a moment, then spoke. We do not fight because it is easy. We fight because no one else will. His voice was calm, steady, but carried a weight that made every soldier stand taller. The fleets began to form. Colossal carriers rolled from orbital docks, their hulls black as night. Each bore the insignia of Earth. An image feared across the stars. Smaller ships flanked them like hunting wolves, destroyers and cruisers armed with weapons the galaxy prayed never to see. In the barracks, soldiers suited up, armor clamped into place with sharp hisses, helmets sealed, faces vanished behind mirrored visors. Inside every human heart burned the same thought: we survive what others cannot, and we fight where others will not. The council across the gal. Axie trembled. In their vast halls of light, diplomats whispered, the humans are mobilizing. Fear colored their voices. One alien ambassador slammed his clawed hand on the table. This is madness. They are Deathworlders. They will bring fire to us all. Another whispered, almost in awe. Or perhaps they will save us. Back on Earth, silence ruled the preparation. There were no loud speeches, no empty promises. Humans had learned long ago that action was worth more than words. Engines roared, fuel lines pumped, weapon systems lit up with deadly blue light. The fleet was awakening. Among the soldiers, young recruits whispered old tales. They spoke of the jungle storms that raised humanity, of the deserts that taught them to endure, of predators that hunted them, and of ancestors who fought with stone until they made steel. This is why we win, one soldier muttered, tightening his grip on his rifle. We come from the hardest world. We know no other way. High above, the first wave of ships lifted into orbit. The ground shook as if the planet itself was giving birth to giants. Families watched from safe zones, children pointing with wide eyes as shadows of war machines crossed the clouds. They had seen humans go to battle before, but this time the whole Earth moved. In hidden command towers, orders were given in crisp voices. Fleet 1 ready. Fleet 2 moving to position. Jump drives charging. The sound of discipline, the rhythm of war, flowed like music only humans could play. The invaders, far away, mocked the desperate aliens still under siege. No one is coming for you, they laughed. Your council has abandoned you. They did not know that Deathworlders were already on their way, engines howling, weapons primed, hearts cold with resolve. One last council was held among the human commanders before the fleet launched. The iron-eyed leader stood before them, his voice low but unshakable. We are not heroes. We are not saviors. We are survivors. They begged for help, and we will give it. But remember this, we do not fight for glory. We fight so that no one else will stand alone. The room fell silent. Every soldier felt the weight of those words. Outside, thousands of ships floated in formation, their silhouettes blotting out the stars, like a wall of steel between the helpless and their hunters. In the galaxy's far corners, spies and observers sent frantic reports. The humans are coming, they whispered to their masters. The Deathworlders are preparing for war. The enemy laughed at first, then grew quiet, for they too had heard the legends. Back in the bunkers of the doomed world, the aliens who had sent the SOS sat in despair, unaware of what had begun. They still thought no one cared, that the void had swallowed their cry. Their skies burned with enemy fire. Their people cried out. Their leaders sank into hopelessness. But the void was no longer silent. It was filled with the thunder of human engines, the growl of Deathworld steel, the beat of soldiers' hearts. A final command was given. Jump! The fleets aligned, energy surged, and space itself bent around them. Humanity was coming, not with mercy but with fire. The arrival of the fleet. The alien world burned under the shadow of its enemies. Vast warships hovered above their cities, their weapons raining fire. Entire continents trembled as towers collapsed and oceans turned black with smoke. The defenders had little left, broken fleets, shattered armies, and hope that slipped away more each hour. The leaders gathered in an underground chamber, their faces pale and their eyes hollow. "No one is coming," one whispered, his voice shaking. Anat. Her slammed his fist on the table. "We begged the council, we begged the stars, and still, nothing." Silence followed, a silence heavy with despair. Then the sky changed. At first, the survivors thought it was another wave of enemy ships. They saw shadows blotting out the suns, and fear gripped their hearts. But these shadows moved differently. They came in disciplined lines, silent, perfect, overwhelming. And then the comms lit up. The enemy laughed when they detected the new arrivals. "Another broken race sending scraps to die," they mocked. But their laughter stopped when the first human signal cut across the void. A calm, steady voice filled every channel. "This is the fleet of Earth. You will stand down, or you will be erased." The invaders scoffed. Earth? The cursed world? The death world that should have stayed hidden? They raised their weapons, sure of victory, but what they saw next drained the color from their faces. The humans arrived in force. Colossal carriers slid out of hyperspace, their hulls so vast they cast shadows over entire continents. Escort ships flanked them, sleek destroyers and cruisers armed with railguns and plasma cannons that hummed with deadly power. It was not a rescue fleet, it was a wall of war. On the ground, alien civilians ran into the streets staring at the sky. They had expected one or two ships, maybe a token force, but instead they saw hundreds, then thousands emerging like predators from the dark. Engines glowed blue like burning stars, hulls gleamed black like knives in the night. Children pointed with wide eyes, elders wept. Soldiers who had been ready to surrender now gripped their weapons tighter, whispering, "They came. They actually came." The first wave of human ships did not fire immediately. They spread across the orbit like a net, locking down the enemy's escape routes. Human commanders spoke in cold voice. "Kesti, tight formation, no mistakes, no mercy." The enemy fleet moved to strike, confident in their numbers, but the humans struck first, a single railgun fired from the lead destroyer. The shot cut through an enemy battleship as if it were paper, splitting it apart in silence before the explosion lit the void. Gasps echoed across the alien world. The impossible had just happened. A battleship that had terrorized them for weeks was gone in an instant. The enemy roared in anger, launching a storm of fire at the humans. But Earth's fleet did not scatter. They advanced, shields flaring, weapons answering with precision. Plasma tore through cruisers, missiles rained on carriers, and boarding crafts shot forward like spears. The defenders on the ground cheered. Their skies, once filled with death, now thundered with hope. Every blast from the humans was a promise. You are not alone. But fear came with awe. The humans fought without hesitation, without mercy. Every maneuver was sharp, every strike lethal. It was not just battle, it was execution. The enemy began to falter, not because of their losses, but because of what they were facing. They had heard the legends, and now they knew they were true. In the council halls far away, leaders watched live feeds with wide eyes. Some trembled. "They actually sent their fleet," others whispered. "This is why we feared them." On the alien world, a child clutched her mother's hand and whispered, "What are they?" The mother, voice trembling, answered, "They are humans." The battle grew fiercer. Enemy ships clustered together, trying to resist, but the humans cut through them like blades through cloth. Each explosion lit the sky, a signal to the suffering people below that the tide had turned. Inside a command ship, the iron-eyed human commander stood silent, his voice calm when he spoke. "Push forward, take their flagship, show them why Deathworlders are never called lightly." The humans advanced, engines roaring, guns blazing, unstoppable. On the ground, hope returned, fear still lingered, but it was now mixed with awe. The people who had begged for help now understood. They had not called heroes. They had called something far older, far more dangerous. They had called Deathworlders, and the galaxy would never forget what came out of the void that day. The Deathworlders unleashed. The sky was fire, battleships burned, explosions rippled across the void, and the people below watched in stunned silence. They had expected a rescue, maybe a few ships, maybe enough to buy time, but what they were seeing was something else entirely. This was not rescue, this was dominance. The human fleet moved with cold precision. Carriers unleashed waves of strike craft, small and deadly, swarming the enemy like a storm of steel bees. Railguns thundered, their shots cutting clean holes through ships that once seemed invincible. Missiles streaked across the black, each one finding its target as if guided by fate. On the ground, civilians clutched each other. Their fear had not vanished, but it had changed. They now feared and worshipped the humans in equal measure. Children cried not from terror, but from the overwhelming force of what they were witnessing. A group of alien soldiers on the surface lifted their weapons skyward and cheered. "The Deathworlders fight for us," one said, his voice breaking. "We are not alone anymore." Inside the enemy fleet, panic spread. Commanders shouted at their crews, forcing them to regroup, but every order came too late. Their formation broke apart like sand under a wave. Every ship that tried to run was cut down. Every squadron that tried to resist was crushed. Broadcasts spread across the galaxy. News relays captured every moment, transmitting the battle into homes, taverns, temples, and council chambers. Billions with the HFY Atched as humans, fought like predators unleashed. A commentator's voice shook as he spoke. "The legends are true. The Deathworlders have returned." In the human command ship, silence reigned. The iron-eyed commander stood tall, giving orders with the calm of a surgeon. "Squadron 3, flank left. Cut their carrier in half. Boarding teams, ready your drops." His voice carried no anger, no pride, only certainty. Dropships broke away from the carriers, diving into the atmosphere. On their wings, the insignia of Earth glowed like a warning. Civilians pointed to the streaks of fire cutting through the clouds. "They are coming down," they whispered, half in fear, half in hope. Enemy ground forces scrambled. Tanks rolled into the streets. Walkers thudded across shattered roads. Artillery lined the ridges. They thought they were ready. They thought they could crush the humans when they touched the soil. They were wrong. The first human strike team landed in a ruined city. The dropship's doors blew open and soldiers stormed out, armored in black steel that glimmered like the night sky. Their boots struck the ground as one. Their rifles roared, cutting down enemies in seconds. Alien defenders hiding in the rubble peeked out, their eyes wide. They had never seen warriors move like this, fast, precise, relentless. Humans advanced without hesitation, covering each other, striking like a single machine with 1,000 moving parts. The invaders tried to counterattack, but they faced something they could not understand. Humans had grown on a world of predators. They had survived in jungles that swallowed the unprepared, deserts that killed the careless, mountains that broke the weak. Their instincts were sharper than blades. One human soldier tore an enemy commander from his machine with bare hands. Another squad used the wreckage of a tank as cover while blasting apart the rest of the column. The battlefield became a nightmare for the invaders. On the streets, civilians stepped out cautiously. Some dropped to their knee. Some wept, others whispered prayers. For the first time in weeks, the skies above them did not belong to their enemies. Meanwhile, in orbit, the flagship of the invaders turned its massive guns toward the human fleet, hoping to crush their morale with one devastating strike. But the humans had already anticipated. 3 cruisers broke formation and cut across the flagship's bow. Railguns fired in perfect unison. The shots pierced through its armor, shattering it from within. The galaxy watched live as the enemy's greatest warship tore apart in silence before the explosion turned the void into light. Entire empires gasped. For centuries, the invaders had ruled unchallenged, and now, in a single day, their myth of power was broken. On the alien world, children looked up at the fireball and shouted with joy. Soldiers who had been ready to die shouted in triumph, and their leaders whispered to each other, "We called for help," and death itself answered. In the command room, the human leader gave a final order, his voice steady. "Do not stop. Press them back, burn them out, show them what it means to challenge Earth." And so the Deathworlders advanced. The aliens had begged for mercy. The humans gave them survival, but survival carved in fire and blood. The galaxy trembled as it realized this was only the beginning, the enemy's desperation. The battlefield was no longer theirs. The invaders who had once walked with pride now crawled in fear. Their fleets burned in orbit, their armies broke apart in the streets. and the people they had sworn to enslave now stood behind the Deathworlders, whispering their names with awe, but desperation is dangerous. Inside the enemy's command ship, the High Warlord bared his teeth, his claws dug into the arm of his chair as he hissed, "We underestimated them. We thought them beasts, but they are worse. Predators in steel," his attitude. Visors shifted nervously, one whispering, "Then we must unleash the reserves, the forbidden weapons." The warlord's eyes burned. He pressed a clawed hand onto the console. "Do it." Moments later, across the planet and orbit, new shapes appeared. Vast machines, larger than cities, rose from hidden bunkers, their armor pulsing with energy. In orbit, colossal dreadnoughts unfolded from hyperspace, armed with weapons the galaxy had only whispered about in fear. These were the Empire's secret blades, weapons designed not for war, but for annihilation. On the surface, civilians froze as shadows swallowed the ruins. The machines towered above mountains, walking on legs like pillars of iron. Each step cracked the earth. Each cannon mounted on their frames hummed with power that could turn entire districts to ash. The humans did not flinch. From the orbiting fleet came the calm voice of the iron-eyed commander. "They are desperate. This is their last stand. Form tight lines, prepare the counter." Dropships poured more soldiers onto the surface. Tanks rolled from carriers. Drones took to the skies. The humans moved with discipline, not fear. They had seen monsters before, on their own world. They had fought beasts that tore men apart with claws, storms that drowned cities, winters that froze nations. What were these machines compared to Earth itself? The first enemy Colossus fired. A beam of searing light carved a canyon through the battlefield. Buildings melted. Streets turned to rivers of glass. Alien defenders screamed and fell. The crowd gasped, thinking no one could survive such power, but through the smoke, the humans advanced. Their tanks split formation, flanking the giant. Railguns boomed, slamming into its legs. Missiles streaked upward, punching holes into glowing armor. A squad of human soldiers sprinted through the dust, scaling its massive frame with grappling hooks. Their rifles tore open joints. Grenades burned into its core. The monster fell, shaking the ground like an earthquake. And the civilians watching screamed not in fear, but in wild, uncontrollable joy. Yet the enemy had more. Dozens of the great machines rose, their dreadnoughts in orbit firing devastating volleys that shook the human carriers. The invaders laughed once more. "Even Deathworlders cannot stop this. They will fall as all do before us." But humanity did not fall. They adapted. Every strike was answered with precision. Humans broke apart enemy formations, baiting the giants into traps. They used their world-born cunning, fighting not with brute force alone, but with strategy sharper than any blade. In orbit, the dreadnoughts turned their cannons on Earth's lead carrier. The blast tore through space. For a heartbeat, silence followed, as if the humans had finally been struck down. Then the smoke cleared. The carrier was still there, shields glowing like molten fire, and its guns lit up in reply. The dreadnought never stood a chance. The first volley from the humans ripped through its belly, splitting it open. The second volley shattered its core. The third left nothing but a cloud of burning fragments. Across the galaxy, watchers trembled. Empires that had feared the invaders now stared in disbelief. The Deathworlders did not just resist, they crushed the strongest weapons of the age. On the surface, alien defenders rallied behind the humans. They took up arms once more, shouting, "With them we fight, with them we live." For the first time, they believed survival was possible. The warlord on the enemy flagship roared in fury. "They are only humans, only one species. Why do they not break?" His advisors said nothing. Their silence was the answer, because Deathworlders never broke. The humans pressed forward, striking harder, faster. Every giant machine that fell shook the earth, but the soldiers did not slow. Every dreadnought that exploded. Ed lit the sky with fire, but the fleet never faltered. The invaders had unleashed their worst, and humanity had only grown stronger. The iron-eyed commander's voice echoed once more through the channels, calm, sharp, final. "Push them to the edge, break their will, make the galaxy remember." And so they did. The invaders' desperation turned to terror. Their weapons, once feared across the stars, were now trophies in the path of the Deathworlders. The civilians who had begged for help looked up at the sky and whispered, "They are not saviors. They are storms." The galaxy trembled, because storms never stop. The aftermath of fire. The battlefield was quiet at last. Smoke rose in dark rivers into the broken skies. The ground was cracked and scarred, littered with the remains of enemy war machines. The air still carried the thunder of railguns, the echo of explosions, the screams of dying invaders, but now those sounds faded, replaced by silence. The invaders were gone, their fleet shattered, their armies crushed, their war machines nothing more than burning wrecks scattered across the cities they once ruled. The Colossus machines that had terrified millions now lay on their sides, their towering frames broken open like carcasses left for scavengers. The alien people, the ones who had sent the desperate SOS, emerged slowly from the ruins. At first they crept like shadows, expecting another strike, another storm of fire, but none came. Instead, above them, the skies cleared and the stars shone once more through the smoke. On the ground, children clutched their parents, whispering, "Are we safe? Are they gone?" Elders sank to their knees, touching the soil, weeping for those who had been lost. Their leaders stood silent, unable to speak because they did not yet understand what had truly happened. Then they looked up. Above them, the human fleet remained. Thousands of ships hung in perfect formation, their dark hulls gleaming in the starlight. They did not celebrate. They did not roar in victory. They only stood, silent, steady, like watchers in the void. The survivors whispered, "Are they angels? Are they demons? What have we called upon?" In the council halls across the galaxy, panic spread. The broadcasts of the battle reached every world, every race, every empire. Every citizen saw how the humans had fought, without fear, without mercy, without hesitation. One council member cried, "They have destroyed the invaders' strongest fleet. What hope do the rest of us have if they turn on us?" Another whispered, "Perhaps they are the only hope we have left." Back on the alien world, the humans landed once more. Dropships touched down in the rubble. Soldiers moved through the ruins. Some offered water to the thirsty, food to the starving, medicine to the broken. Others helped lift rubble, pulling survivors from collapsed towers. For a moment, the Deathworlders looked less like storms of destruction and more like guardians. But fear lingered. When a child was handed bread by a human soldier, she smiled with tears in her eyes. Yet her mother trembled, unable to meet the soldier's mirrored visor. The people were alive, yes, but at what cost? They had begged for help, and humanity had answered. But the answer had come in fire. Their cities were ruins, their fields were ash, their skies scarred by fleets that blotted out suns. The invaders were gone, but so too was the world they once knew. And standing in the ashes were humans, calm and unshaken. In the command ship, the iron-eyed leader looked out across the battlefield. His officers reported the numbers. Enemy fleets destroyed, enemy soldiers captured, survivors rescued. He nodded once, then said only, "Begin relief operations, keep defenses in place. We are not finished here." For the humans, this was not victory. It was survival extended, a duty fulfilled. They did not boast. They did not claim glory. I only prepared for the next step, because for Deathworlders, war never ended. The rescued aliens gathered in a council of their own, their leaders speaking in hushed voices. They saved us, yes, but they also showed us what they are. If they could do this to the invaders, what could they do to us if we angered them? Another leader shook his head. They did not come to conquer. They came because no one else would. Never forget that. But doubt lingered in every heart. Gratitude mixed with fear. Admiration mixed with unease. Messages spread across the galaxy. Rumors and whispers turned into warnings. The humans are awake. The Deathworlders fight once more. Some celebrated, some trembled, some began to prepare for a future where Earth's fleet could appear in any sky at any time. On the alien world, the survivors built shrines, not of stone or gold, but of memory. They told their children, "We begged for help and they came." And the children listened with wide eyes, not knowing if the tale was blessing or curse. Above them, the human fleet stayed silent, engines glowing, weapons ready. They did not leave yet, for humans knew the war was not truly over. The invaders had been broken, but not destroyed completely. The galaxy had watched, and now the galaxy would judge. The iron-eyed commander spoke softly as he looked out at the stars. "They will learn from this. They will fear us. They will hate us. But they will never forget that when no one else came, Earth did." And in the silence that followed, the galaxy trembled. The Deathworld legacy, the war was over, but its shadow stretched far across the galaxy. Worlds that had once mocked humans now spoke their name with trembling voices. Empires that had turned away from the SOS now held secret meetings, wondering if Earth's wrath would one day fall upon them. On the alien world that had been saved, life began again slowly. Families rebuilt homes from rubble, children played in streets scarred by fire, and elders sat by the ruins, whispering stories of the day the Deathworlders came. They remembered how the skies had split, how the human fleet had blocked out the stars, how soldiers of Earth had marched like storms and broken the invaders. But their stories did not speak of gentle heroes. They spoke of power, of fear, of survival, granted not by kindness but by overwhelming force. A child asked her grandfather, "Were they angels?" The old man shook his head, his eyes distant. "No, little one. They are humans. They are what comes when the galaxy turns its back. They are the answer you do not want, but the only one you get." In the great halls of the Galactic Council, arguments burned. Some demanded sanctions against Earth. "They are too dangerous," one shouted. "If they can do this to the invaders, they can do it to us." Others argued with quieter voices. "Without them, the world would have fallen. Without them, the invaders would still reign. We did nothing. They did everything." But beneath every speech lay the same truth. The galaxy had witnessed something it could not forget. On Earth, the soldiers returned in silence. They did not march in parades. They did not call themselves saviors. They stepped off their ships, put away their weapons, and returned to families who embraced them with tears. For them, it was not glory. It was another war survived, another duty fulfilled. The iron-eyed commander sat in a quiet room, staring at the reports. He saw the numbers: millions saved, millions lost, enemies destroyed, allies awakened. He closed the screen and whispered to himself, "We did what had to be done. That is all." But he knew it was not the end. For across the stars, rumors spread. Children on distant worlds whispered about Deathworlders in hushed tones. Soldiers trained harder. Leaders built bigger fleets, all because of what they had seen. The galaxy was no longer the same. On the saved world, the people raised a monument of steel and stone. At its heart stood the figure of a human soldier, visor shining, rifle at his side, carved not as a hero, but as a warning. At the base were inscribed the words, "They came when no one else would." Generations would pass and the story would be told again and again. Each telling would change a little. Some would call humans saviors, others would call them monsters, but none would ever deny their power. And in quiet places, other races whispered a new saying. "Pray you never need the Deathworlders, but if you do, pray they answer." On Earth, leaders gathered in hidden chambers. They spoke of what came next. "The galaxy has seen us," one said. "They will fear us. They will respect us. They will prepare against us," another answered. "Then we must be ready. We cannot sleep again. The stars know our name now." The iron-eyed commander looked to the skies, his voice steady. "We will not conquer. We will not rule. But if they call, we will answer. And if they threaten, we will burn them." The galaxy shivered at those words, though they were never spoken aloud beyond that room, for humanity had returned. On distant worlds, children drew stars and fleets in the dust, adding black ships with Earth's crest upon them. Merchants swore by the name of humans. Soldiers trained in fear of fighting them. Priests spoke of them as omens, some as curses, some as blessings. The legacy was set. Humanity would not be forgotten, not for centuries, not for millennia. Because the day the galaxy begged for help, it was not the Council who answered. Not the great empires, not the old alliances. It was Earth. The Deathworlders had risen from silence, and the galaxy would never sleep as peacefully again. And so the story was told in every corner of the stars, whispered by survivors, written into histories, carried by traders and soldiers. It always began the same. They begged for help, and humanity's Deathworld fleet arrived instead.